B-roll is all about compressing time. It's about taking things that are in motion, and then we have two different types of B-roll action. One of them is the dynamic sequencing, and one of them is the static sequencing. The dynamic sequencing is moving from one location to another. For example, as I mentioned before, let's say somebody needs to travel home. What are the steps that they need to do to travel home? So we will follow them through dynamic sequencing, through compressing time, each of those main or key steps through various video shots. The static sequencing is a sequence of events that happens in one location. So that means, for example, somebody who is a craftsperson, they could be perhaps making a bird cage by hand. So what are the steps that they do to make that bird cage? The first step all the way until the very, very last step. In shooting the B-roll and action sequences, my recommendation is you're going to set your main dial to the aperture priority mode, AV mode. Sometimes, of course, you can still use the M or manual mode if it's some more difficult things to shoot. For example, if you really need to be much more control of the light, if it's overexposing or underexposing in the aperture priority. But aperture priority mode is good for shooting B-roll because you have to move the camera around a lot. Because you have to follow the action, you have to try to get different shots when it comes to static sequencing. So that means the camera's going in different locations. And this way, by choosing aperture priority, we're allowing the camera to quickly make sure the exposure is correct for us. The ISO, you can also put in auto mode so that the camera can again decide what's the best way to shoot a scene so that it does not get over or underexposed. My recommendation again is to turn the image stabilizer and the lens to off because we're going to be shooting everything on the tripod, so you won't need stabilized video. And of course, as I mentioned before, if you use the stabilizer on, it runs the battery down even much more quickly than if it's turned off. So we can just have it off and we'll put everything on the tripod. Set the lens to autofocus. Use the shutter button to depress it just a little bit, and that will focus onto something for you. We will use the smile tracking mode to make sure that once you focus on, let's say, a person, if that person is moving around, hopefully our tracking device, our autofocus tracking device on our camera should keep that person in focus. Otherwise, if it's a more difficult shot, then you might want to change to manual focusing so that you can override the camera. Of course, at the end of every day of shooting, I suggest that you immediately download all your video files to one location, back them up to another, and have a look at them, because then you can see if there's maybe some shots that you have missed that you can go back and shoot again a second time. For example, if it is a static action, that means it's a sequencing in one location. Of course, if it's somebody doing something in that one location, you can shoot those over and over again. But it's a bit more difficult to try to reshoot something in a dynamic sequence, because then something has already moved. How do you recreate that? Unless, of course, it is a kind of repetition of somebody moving from one place to another, or something moving from one place to another. The video action is all about sequencing. It's about condensing time, compressing time, taking something that happens over, let's say, 5 or 6 minutes, shooting a bunch of shots, and then compressing that time and showing that action happening, rather than 5 minutes, showing it happening in 30 seconds. That means a bunch of small, short shots that you can edit together from various angles. The action needs to be captured and shown in a logical way. The movement from one shot to the next needs to be seamless in the editing process. Shots need to show a variety of movement, atmosphere, and environment. The two types of sequencing: static action that happens in one location in the creation of something, and the dynamic, a physical movement from one location to the next. So for static sequencing, we're going to work on something that's called the BBC 5-shot rule. And here we're going to be shooting a sequence at a static location that can be approached with the 5 by 3 by 15 kind of rule. And consider these shots. Each should be recorded about 5 to 15 seconds long. So every time we take a shot, every time you hit the record button, record for about 5 or 15 seconds. And the 5 shots are this. First of all, where? This is a wide shot of the environment when the action is happening, right? We want to see the entire space. So let's use the example of somebody who's making a bird cage. So the last person in Hong Kong who still makes bamboo bird cages by hand. So we want to show this person maybe in their stall, but with a very, very wide angle. So we see his stall or his store in relation to the entire environment. We don't have to see him so close, but we can hopefully can identify him that he is doing something in his store. So we're going to set up our camera on the tripod. We're going to shoot a wide shot, 5 to 15 seconds. Zoom the camera in halfway. Keep the tripod and everything in the exact same location. We're still shooting the where. Zoom it in halfway. Shoot again 5 to 15 seconds. And then zoom it in even further, more on the person. Again, 5 to 15 seconds. All right? So that is our first shot. That's the where. But we've done 3 versions of that. Wide, medium, and tight. Next. Shot number 2. What's happening? All right? So now we're going to take our camera. We're going to go closer to the person working on this bird cage. We're going to do 3 shots again. So maybe we could shoot, not totally tight, but maybe from showing half the person's body as they're working on a bird cage. All right? So what's being done? He's working on a bird cage. 1 shot. 5 to 15 seconds. We're shooting that wide. Keep the camera in the same place. Zoom it in halfway. Now we're seeing maybe his hands a little bit closer. 5 to 15 seconds. Now we do shot number 3. Zoom it in very close. Just the intricacy of his fingers or something working with the bamboo. Another 5 to 15 seconds. All right, that was shot number 2. Shot number 3 is who. Who is doing this? Well, this is the person that we want to do the story on. Now we need 3 shots of the person. So we're shooting it from an angle so we see the person's face head on, straight on, as best as possible. Again, 3 shots, wide, medium, and tight, 5 to 15 seconds each one. Shot number 4, how is it being done? Now this is something that we could call over-the-shoulder shot. So now we get the camera behind the person, and we're going to shoot over their shoulder of what they're doing, as if we're looking from the perspective of that person doing it. Again, 3 shots, wide, medium, and tight. Now, after that, shot number 5, this is not really a single shot. We can find many new different creative ways of shooting this. So shoot from many different angles. Shoot wide, shoot medium to tight. You need to try to get as many different shots as possible from as many different angles as possible. So we'll have maybe a good 30 or 40 or even 50 different types of shots that we can use later on to edit this process of the person making a bird cage. And maybe it takes 30, 40 minutes. Maybe it takes a full day. But we want to compress that all down to a much shorter amount of time. Right? That is the video action for static sequencing.
What I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you how to do what's called the BBC 5-shot rule. And that's really, it's a great way to shoot a lot of really good individual short clips to show a static sequence. So a sequence of events that happens in a static in one location as B-roll. Importantly, turn the camera on. Okay? Flip this around. Now, for shooting B-roll, most of the times my recommendation is we're going to go with aperture priority, as I mentioned before. We're going to go with autofocus on the lens. Manual focus if it's more difficult, but we're going to be moving a lot with the camera, so autofocus is good and aperture priority is good. We set the ISO. We can set it as we want as our own. I think we've got it on automatic white balance. My ISO, where is my ISO? Actually, I think since I have it on aperture priority, it should set by itself. Next thing is, we're not going to use the internal microphone as I mentioned before. We're going to shoot with one of 2 mics. We're either going to use the shotgun mic. The shotgun mic is used for B-roll action. Attach it on top of the camera, screw it down, take the cable, open the side of the camera, push it in, turn your microphone on. So now we're recording, capturing sound from one direction. And we're going to do this because as I'm recording him, I want the sound, the natural and ambient sound, coming as clearly as possible. All right? So now we're going to do the 5-shot rule. 5-shot rule is basically this. We're going to do 3 different versions of each of the 5 shots. The 3 different versions are wide, medium, and detail. So wide, medium, and close-up, so to say. And the 5-shot rule is this. First of all, we want to get a wide shot of what is happening. So we want to show the environment of Paboy working out on this stair climber. Ideally, again, I'm going to shoot everything on the tripod. Right? So I would put everything, I would put the tripod on here and I would move the tripod around. Right now I'm going to show you how to do it without the tripod just so I can quickly move because otherwise it takes too much time. So I'll leave this here for now. But just imagine I'm using the tripod. Okay, so first we're going to do a wide shot. So we're not going to zoom in, we're going to keep the camera very wide. Now I've got Paboy working out. I'm going to have it on the tripod. I'm going to record for roughly 5 to 10 seconds from right here. After 5 to 10 seconds, I hit stop. I'm going to zoom in about halfway, so we get him a little bit like this. Shoot again on the tripod, same location, 5 to 10 seconds. Hit stop. Now we're going to zoom in even further so we get more of him. Right, get it in focus. Again, 5 to 10 seconds. Let it record on the tripod. Stop. So now we have the environment, the space of where something is happening. Shot number 2 is we need to know who's doing it. And in this case, Paboy is doing the workout. So I'm going to take my camera. Now I need to look at the subject. Who's doing it? So I'm going to have my camera here, again on the tripod. 3 shots. 1 zoomed all the way out. I've got a wide angle shot. 5 to 10 seconds. Stop. Zoom in. 5 to 10 seconds. Stop. Even tighter, so we get really, really tight in his face. 5 to 10 seconds. Stop. That was shot number 2. Shot number 3 is what is being done. Paboy is doing something. He's working out. Now we've got many different things we can look at here. The main motion we can see is happening with his feet and with his arms. So maybe I'll start with zoomed out. What's being done? He's working out. On the tripod, 5 to 10 seconds, the feet moving. Next one, I'm moving halfway. Hit record again, another 5 to 10 seconds. Third time, I zoom all the way in for a tighter shot, 5 to 10 seconds. So that's shot number 3. First shot, wide. Second shot, who's doing it? Third shot, what's being done? And now we want to know how it's being done. And that means we're looking from the perspective of the person doing the workout. So in this case, we want to basically have the camera angle over his shoulder. So we want to look down this way. So we wanted to get the camera way up here, as if we are looking onto this console, that we are the person doing the workout. So again, start with wide, 5 to 10 seconds, zoom in halfway, 5 to 10 seconds, zoom in closer, 5 to 10 seconds. That's shot number 4. So again, we've got the wide shot, the entire environment, where, basically, who, Paboy, what, working out, how, over his shoulder. Shot number 5 is the creative shot. With shot number 5, we can now do all kinds of things. And we should focus on lots of medium shots and lots of detail shots. So, for example, I could come in, look from here, I can come from up here, I can come from down here, I can look at his hand, I can look at him from the side, I can look at him from below. So get as many different shots as possible. But the 5 most important ones are the environment, where it is, who's doing it, his face, what's happening, he's working out, how he's doing it from his perspective over his shoulder, and then get a variety of more interesting creative shots, as it's so-called say. Okay, and that's it. That's a very simple 5-shot rule for getting plenty of shots to do what's called a static sequencing shot for B-roll.
Now I've got a little video here, the Fiddle Buster, so you get an idea of how this kind of static sequencing works, shooting many different shots from many different angles. And again, looking at the environment, looking at what's being done, looking at who's doing it, how it's being done, and then being very creative in many more shots afterwards. The next sequence of B-roll. This is video action dynamic sequencing. So this is shooting a sequence of events as someone or something moves from one location to another. Again, we need to shoot a good variety of wide, medium, and tight shots at each quote-unquote key location during the movement from one place to the next. What I mean by key location is, first of all, we know we have 2 key locations. The key location number 1 is the person leaving, or something is leaving a destination, or leaving a place. The last shot will be it arrives at the destination, right? The door is closed, the car is turned off, whatever it may be. Now think of all of the various different things that happen between the beginning and the end, all those various key locations. And again, if we think about all of these individual little places, sometimes better, some of them are better to be shot tight. Sometimes we need a wide angle. So that's totally up to you what you think is best for the wide, medium, and tight shots. Try to be creative. Try not to be so repetitive and do the same kind of shots. Shoot from overhead, shoot from down low, shoot very, very close details, shoot mediums and shoot wides. Vary your compositions and locations of the camera. Let the subjects enter and exit the frame during the shot. So if you know that somebody is going to be walking from left to right or right to left, start your recording before they've even entered the frame of the camera. As soon as they enter the frame, record, 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 and let it record until they exit the frame. And then you can stop your recording. Because this is a good way, when you have these entries and exits, that you can edit them together much easier and much more clearly later on.
So I'm going to shoot another B-roll sequence, but before we had Paboy working out on a machine, that's a static dynamic or static sequence. Now we're going to do what's called a B-roll dynamic sequence. I'm going to follow him as he is walking out somewhere. So I'm going to have various shots of him as he prepares to leave. So Paboy, come over here. I'm going to pretend like I'm doing a few shots. The first one will be as you're working out. So here's shot number 1 in the sequence. I've got to show the beginning to the end. My beginning is he is done working out. The end will be he goes into the elevator. Okay? So my shot number 1 is I might have a wide shot. Okay, Paboy, I'm hitting record. He's putting the weights down. Okay, I'm shooting this. Yeah, go ahead. He's putting the weights down. Okay, that's done. He walks off camera. Stop. Okay, my stop recording. Next shot. Now, if I can just have you walk back again. Now I'm going to, let's say, go over here. And now I'm going to have, let's say, a shot of his feet as he's walking by. I'm going to record his feet walking by. Okay, stop. Now I'm going to run over here. Now I'm going to have another wide shot as he's walking by again. Okay, he goes off camera. Stop. Now I'm going to get close to the door. I'm going to have a close-up as he opens the door. Oh, push the button. Or even better, he's got to push the button here. Okay, another shot. He opens the door. Go ahead and walk out. I'm going to wait for him as the door closes. Stop the shot. Now, let's follow him out. Okay, so Paboy, come over here. I would then perhaps walk back so I can't see you. I'm going to record as he's walking by. Another shot, medium shot, Paboy is walking by. He goes off camera. Next shot, I'm going to prepare as he pushes the button for the elevator. Detail shot, he pushes the button. Next shot, I'm going to look up here. Elevators arrive. Final shot, maybe I could be out here, or if you step out, I could be inside of the elevator and shoot as he's walking in. That was good. He's walking in. He pushes the button. The door closes, and that's the last part of the shot. So now we've got, thank you, we've got a sequence of him finishing up his workout, and our final shot is of him going inside of the elevator. And that's the dynamic sequence.
Let's have a look at another video. This is called Benevolent Mischief. And pay attention to the various different forms of dynamic and static sequencing. How things move, how vehicles move, how people move. And then look at also at the static sequencing. What somebody's doing at one location or what somebody's doing at another location. When you're shooting B-roll, again, think of this ratio that we talked about before, the 1 to 2 to 4. Shoot lots of wide, shoot more medium, and definitely shoot many more close-up or detail shots. Be very, very creative, especially in your detail shots. Try to move your camera around as much as possible. And with that, if you want to, you can review this video called In His Master's Footsteps. This, again, is very, very closely emulates this 1 to 2 to 4 ratio that we had talked about before.
形成自己风格，要在继承前辈的基础上形成个人的东西。我和那什么恩师张大千相识的时候，他已经步入了，当时身体很不好，已经步入了晚年时期了。只不过我画完画以后，他给我指点，我拿给他看的时候，当然我受益匪浅呐。我以前模仿，以前一直模仿，现在我就几乎就是画，在他继承那什么恩师的风格基础上，我现在也在寻找自己的风格。现在我放弃，我没有完全放弃，对，是一个从零心情，继承发扬光大。因为什么？因为没有恩师指点，就不会有我今天。如果你一味的去仿画，你就成了画匠了，你就不是一位画家了。
When shooting B-roll, also think of action and reaction shots. So this is something, if something happens, then show what was affected. If somebody looks somewhere or turns to something, show what is being looked at or being turned to. Another example, let's say somebody's in a kitchen and you're recording a chef or a cook doing something, and they reach for something that is off frame or off camera. The next logical shot should be the detail of them reaching for something. What is it that they're grabbing? Well, let's say you have two people that are talking to each other and suddenly they both turn and look in a specific direction. Well, what are they looking at? That should be your next logical shot. Remember again, we're not shooting TV style. That means don't direct your people, don't direct your subjects to do things, to repeat things. Don't set up shots. Don't move things around. You have time to get good shots, so you need to get them. This is all about having lots of time. Not like TV where they have to move very, very quickly. And they only have an hour to get a few shots and they have to go back and edit. You've got many, many hours and days to work on something. So just pay attention that you need to look that every shot adds something to the story. Don't make a shot happen. Just record the shot as it happens. Think about your jump cuts. Jump cuts is something that refers to a disruption of continuity in action that confuses the viewer or violates a rule of time or logic. Right? Close-ups help avoid jump cuts since they show a portion of the scene. So, for example, a jump cut might be something like this. I know that I'm going to go home. I'm going to leave the CVA building, and I'm going to get into the MTR. So a jump cut might be something like this. I exit the building, and suddenly the next shot is of me being in the MTR riding. Well, what happened to all the stuff in between? How did I get there? So we're jumping from one thing to the next, which doesn't really make much logical sense. So consider all the other shots in between. I walk along the street, I go down the steps, I swipe my card in the MTR, I get on the subway. And then we have the shot of me inside the subway. So try to avoid jump cuts. This is a bit more of a complicated rule, so to say, when it comes to shooting B-roll or action. It's called the 180-degree rule, and not crossing the line, trying to avoid crossing the line. Now I'm going to have Paboy and Chad work with me on this, so I'm going to try to show you a bit more clearly, using this diagram, how we try to avoid crossing the line.
So what we're going to do now is I want to show you a rule that's called not crossing the line. And what that means is once you start taking a shot from one angle, you want to do all of your shots from the same side, because if you cross the line and go to the other side, you will reverse the position of the two people. As an example, we have Chad and Paboy, who are now talking to each other about how to lift weights. Currently, the line between them is like this because they are facing each other. So if I want to start shooting on this side, say for example, I'm going to take a wide angle shot from over here of them doing their work. Then I'm going to go over here and do, let's say, a close-up of Paboy. Now I'm going to go over here and do a close-up of the weights. And now I'm going to go over here and maybe do a medium angle here. So I'm always shooting from this side. I'm on this 180-degree arc. I have Chad on the left and I have Paboy on the right. As soon as I take my camera and I continue shooting over here, I've now reversed their direction. Now I have Paboy on the left and Chad on the right, and we've done what's called crossing the line. So when your viewer sees a change in direction of people without understanding what happened, that the camera came over here, they could get confused. So the best thing to do is if you are shooting a sequence, in this case, a static sequence of something happening between two people, they're in one location, find your first shot, which is going to be over here on this side, and this is a 180-degree arc, so I'm going to shoot everything from this side over here. Details of Paboy's face, details of Chad's face, details of the weights. I'm going to come and do a wide angle over here. Maybe I can step over to the far left or far right to do wide angles, and maybe I can do medium shots as well. Ideally, we don't want to go over there. What may happen is if you do cross the other side of the line and you are doing multiple shots, that's fine. We'll work on that later on in the editing. What we want to do in the editing is we don't want to have the shot here, then a shot there, then a shot here, and a shot there. We'll do a combination of shots on this side, and then we can go to the other side and do a combination of shots from that side. One way that we can get around moving to make it show that we are moving to another side is one of two things. Either I physically record and move with the camera, and as I'm moving with the camera, I'm still recording. Now the viewer understands we've changed positions. The other thing that could happen is, let's say as I'm shooting here, and why don't you guys change positions? So they do the change and I record that. Then it's understood that there's a change that has happened. And now I can start a whole new sequence somewhere else.
All right, so here's our video action checklist. Always use a tripod. Have the image stabilizer turned off. You only need it when you're hand holding your camera, which hopefully you shouldn't need to do. No zooming while shooting, no panning while shooting, and no tilting while shooting. You should just have straight shots, right? We don't need to be too creative. We just let the shots tell the story. Use autofocus mode with the smile tracking option, unless it's a complicated shot. Then you can switch to manual focus. Pay attention to use video to show motion and action, especially when shooting B-roll. Video is good at capturing motion. So make sure that every shot is of something that's actually moving, even if it's one small thing that's moving. We don't need shots of dead things. Use the shotgun microphone to capture natural and close-up sound. Use a built-in microphone to capture 360-degree ambient sound. So for your shooting B-roll, you should be putting the shotgun microphone on top of the camera so you can get close-up ambient and natural sound. Shoot logical sequences within scenes. If you think you miss a shot, go ahead and shoot it and shoot it and shoot it. It's better to have a little bit more than not enough. Still important to monitor your incoming audio. You have to make sure that even if it is natural sound or ambient sound, and it may not be the most important part, you have to make sure that it's not clipping out or it's not too low. Monitor your light and exposure. And again, as much as I hate saying it, we need to be quiet. We need to shut up. Even when shooting B-roll and there is ambient natural sound, you still need to be quiet as the person who is shooting the video. And in particular, if you have your entire team there with you, everybody needs to be quiet.